Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Today, we continue our 2021 webinar series with a special topic and a few special guests. Power an inclusive and engaged workforce with Webex and Workplace by Facebook. I'm your host, Joe Wachna. I'd like you to welcome our special guests today. First, from Workplace is Amelia Kirby, Global Strategic Partnerships Manager, where she is currently responsible for designing and delivering global technology partnerships for Workplace, Facebook's enterprise business product. And from Cisco, we have Tom Richards, Director of Product Management with 20 years experience in software, hardware, cloud, and AI technologies. Tom is currently leading the team responsible for strategic growth and adoption of video collaboration endpoints in Cisco's collaboration technology group. So now, without further ado, let me turn it over to our moderator from Webex, Audie Moda, to kick off Power an inclusive and engaged workforce with Webex and Workplace by Facebook.
Thanks, Joe. So before we go into what Cisco Webex and Workplace is doing, I just wanted to share a couple of slides around our overall partner ecosystem. Can we go to the next slide? Thanks, Joe. So Webex has an open platform and easy to use APIs and SDKs. We help you to embed business applications into Webex app, embed Webex into business applications, and then we help also to create vertical customized business applications with Webex embedded into it. So we try to create seamless collaboration to help your workflows. Can you go to the next slide? And this is the ecosystem of partners that we are working with. There are hundreds available today, and we have many more coming in the future. And with any further ado, I'll give the ball to Tom to talk about what we are doing with Facebook.
Super, thank you, Adi, and delighted to be able to present the next iteration of our partnership with the Facebook team, in particular the Facebook by Workplace by Facebook team with Amelia and her cohorts. Yeah, the flexibility that Adi just described, I think, why is that so important? And I'll try to lay out what's really kind of what we're all facing in this pretty wild environment that we've been living through for the last 15 months. So when we think about the future of work, what is most important is that we have an inclusive culture, that we can reach out to a very diverse community. We have to recognize that diverse community are going to be working in a diverse set of environments. Some are returning to the office, some are returning to the office only part-time, and many of us, myself included, are continuing to work from home. And how do we create an environment that allows everybody to really be part of the true workforce without feeling remote or just sort of distant from what's going on? The other part of this is engagement. It's not a one-way traffic from the leadership to the workforce. It is a two-way discussion. And I think that is fundamental now, and a realization that I think, everybody who's running businesses across the globe realizes and realizes the importance of that. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And then the last is we need to create an intelligent workplace. And that intelligent workplace needs to be able to address the fact that people may be coming in for short periods of time into the offices, that the environment to be safe may be changing based upon guidelines from health departments, from the Center of Disease Control, to be able to make sure that the information is flowing well to the user community, that the user community is reacting well to that, and again, that the user community, in general, the workforce feels like they understand what they need to do. And so we need to enable this architecture with a seamless and secure underlying technology framework, and it needs to be flexible, as Adi has described. So Joe, if you can go to the next slide, please. So what is actually happening? What's really going on in the marketplace? Well, what we found is that in today's environment, there is actually a feeling of being more dispersed, more mobile, more remote, and therefore less connected. And if you look at some of the stats that I have on the slides here, 82% of business leaders say that organizations plan to let employees continue to work from home at least some of the time. So really, this is just the norm and will be the norm going forward, that our teams are now going to include at least one or two people in any meetings or any activities that we get involved with that will be remote. 47% plan to allow employees to do so permanently, to actually stay at home, like myself, in perpetuity. And so this is now the new normal for us. And how do we make this work effectively? And I think there's a huge amount of opportunity actually as we digitize the experiences to really make this effective. Next slide, please, Joe. I wanted to just pick on a particular subset of the workforce, in this case, the frontline workers, and Amelia will pick this up, I think, as she talks about workplace more. But the frontline workforce are a big part of this distributed workforce, of this dispersed community. There are about 2.7 billion frontline workers around the globe. They represent actually about 80% of working people globally, so it's a massive chunk of the workforce. And these people are often at the absolute farthest distance from the leadership of the companies. And so this, as we talk about this new architecture, this new model of distributed working, reaching out and getting feedback from the frontline worker community is a fundamental part of the success of this overall architecture. Joe, next slide. And so with this, what is actually happening today, and this is data that I think, to some extent you can argue even predates the pandemic and the struggles that we've been dealing with over the last 15 months. So when we look at some of these data points, 40% of remote employees reported that nobody at their company had asked them how they were doing. And to be able to get that feedback, I don't think it's because nobody cares, but there's no forum for it. There's no ability to be able to have that kind of connectivity. And when you look at the frontline workers, specifically 14% of frontline workers feel connected to their business, and it's only 14, while only 3% feel connected to the leadership within those businesses. So these numbers are really stark and clearly identify a fundamental need to be able to create and use the kind of technologies that Cisco and Facebook have to offer to create a much more connected environment. Next slide, Joe. And so when we look at why we should do this, it's not just about the well-being of the workforce, but it actually affects the bottom line. Companies with high employee engagement, when measured, are 21% more profitable. People are doing better work. People are as teams able to create better products. It's just more effective. So there's direct measurable value to being able to create this connectivity. Companies who work actively to engage employees have loyalty rates of 233% higher than those who don't. I mean, this is just, talent retention is absolutely central to all of the companies with whom we work. And this, when you look at a statistic like this, it just screams out how important that engagement and engagement architecture is and is going to be even more so going forward. And then there's just the base cost of churn. Every time an employee leaves and a new one comes on, it costs approximately $5,000 on average to hire and onboard a new hire. I would argue that's the very thin end of that data wedge. There is so much more cost and so much more effort and so much more inertia that is raised as teams churn and change, that the costs here are really, as I say, the very thin end of the wedge. So fundamental need to create engagement and directly relevant to the bottom line for all of our companies. Next slide, Joe. So what are we going to talk about today? Before I hand off to Amelia, we'll come back and we're going to talk about how we address one of the key points that I raised in the data, which is how we get executives to be in touch and not just once off with an all hands, but much more in touch with the workforce, and importantly in a two-way model. And that really, if you like, describes why we have partnered up and why we see the value of working so tightly with our friends in Workplace. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Amelia to give you a little background on Workplace before we come back for some demos.
Thanks so much, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Amelia, and I have the pleasure of working with Tom and various folks at Cisco Webex on the partnership that we've built together with Workplace from Facebook. So starting with a bit of an introduction, I assume that at some point in your life, you may have had a Facebook app installed into your phone at any given time. And Facebook was started with the belief that connecting people would drive change, share understanding, new ideas, and ultimately long-term meaning and connection between people. And now our products power more than 3 billion people around the world to build communities, connect with each other, and make a difference. And Workplace from Facebook was built to apply those strengths in the consumer space and bring that connection and community to the world of work. Because as Tom was saying, we believe that the closer people are, the better work becomes, which results in stronger, more engaged teams and work cultures and employee experience, and ultimately more satisfied employees who stay with their companies and deliver value for their businesses for longer. So what does Workplace do exactly? We're a tool dedicated to helping teams communicate with their employees at scale. So internal communications across the organization. And so we leverage the technologies of the Facebook platform to help IT teams and communications teams distribute information to their workforce at scale. And so we've applied familiar features and familiar user interfaces to the world of work. We want to make sure that the right information is reaching the right people at your organization at any given time. But also we use Facebook AI to actually intelligently surface the right content based on which individuals across the organization are interacting with different teams and with different parts of the business. So today, Workplace powers and serves more than 7 million paid users and thousands of organizations across the world to use the tool to communicate internally within their organization. And as Tom was saying, this isn't just for the knowledge worker or the worker who has a desk and a laptop or a company provided device or even a company provided email address. We really care about connecting everyone in the workforce. And that means as well those workers who are on the front line, everything from individuals who are working the shop floor, interacting with customers, working in the manufacturing plant, in the delivery vehicle, in the hospital room. The world of work takes so many forms, and I think what we've learned so much, especially in the past year, is just how critical that other side of the workforce is to help businesses remain alive and keep servicing the customers that they need to across the world. So just to touch on some of the features of the Workplace product specifically, we are focused on asynchronous internal communications capabilities. So we have, like Facebook, we have a similar structure called groups, which applied to the world of the enterprise reflects the organizational structure within your company. So groups dependent on departments that have different permission capabilities to be able to serve different use cases depending on the teams and how they wish to use groups in those teams specifically. We then have a live broadcasting capability, and actually we'll be getting into specifically how this interoperates with the Webex platform and the integrations that we built so far. But the goal here is to enable leaders, executives, people who are departmental heads to be able to go live to their teams, but also to the entire workforce at scale within the secure and gated environment of their own workplace instance. And the goal here is being able to actually communicate quickly and easily with employees and different groups of employees at scale, especially important in this past year where we've all been dispersed and distributed and working remotely. Our knowledge library capability is really focused on surfacing key employee information and resources so that individuals can access it at their fingertips when they need. And then finally, campaigns and insights really speaks to our core capabilities around helping teams distribute information at scale across an organization and power internal communications. We want also those IT and comms leaders to be able to see how those campaigns and how that content is landing. Have you been able to reach everyone that you need to reach? Have you been able to actually land the message that you need? Have those individuals actually read the post and the information that you need them to and interacted with that and given feedback? So we want to provide a suite of tools to help those individuals communicate important company information at scale and reach the people where they need to reach them at any given time within their company. So next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. So why does Workplace and Webex come together in the first place? So Workplace and Webex, we integrate with the Webex video and hardware capabilities to help businesses increase reach and enhance employee engagement across their organization. So we've coupled Cisco's industry-leading, highly secure, enterprise-grade video meetings and devices and synchronous collaboration tools with the workplace asynchronous capabilities for large-scale reach within a company. And together, we're able to reach all corners of the workplace, those individuals especially who are most distributed and perhaps least equipped with tools and devices and company information because of the roles that they play within their organization. So with Workplace and Webex, we believe that leaders can be equipped with secure and high fidelity ways to broadcast to anyone across their organization. And you're going to see what that looks like in a demo shortly. And employees also who are receiving that broadcast are either able to interact and respond and react to that broadcast in real time, if let's say they're watching it on their mobile device, or they're on the move, or they're sitting at their desk watching it on their laptop, but also be able to replay and watch it on demand after the fact. So those folks who are typically in a different time zone from HQ, or perhaps actually have a different native language from their company language, official language, how can they also receive that information and have a capability to have a voice and be able to contribute in the conversation of their organization? So if you could go to the next slide, please, you'll take a look at what this looks like in terms of the features. And this is really our kind of integration, our partnership vision here. We believe we can serve executives with this really easy way to broadcast from Webex into Workplace to be able to reach all their employees, including frontline employees, at scale. And also for those leaders to be able to see the engagement, both real time, but after the fact. For employees, they want to be able to participate in the conversation. They don't want to just receive top-down communications from HQ and have no capability to actually ask questions, give feedback, react to the information that they're hearing. So really what we believe in is actually empowering employees to connect bottom up rather than just top down. And then finally, for those teams that are actually the ones responsible for internal comms and making sure employees have the information that they need at any given time, your HR folks, your IT teams, your internal comms teams, how we provide them tools to measure how their content is landing, but also communicate via these campaigns at scale. And then, of course, the final point here, which is really important around inclusivity, we power automated video captions and translations to make sure everyone has the possibility to interact and contribute to the conversation as it's happening or after the fact. So the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just the beginning. We have huge ambitious goals together to actually deliver more use cases that help serve companies, especially right now as organizations are designing and actually executing on what a return to the office plan looks like. So how can we leverage all the amazing capabilities of the Webex video tools and devices, as well as the strengths that Workplace brings to the table as well, to help teams bring people back to the office, but also better serve the hybrid workforce, which looks to be the future of working models, that will be the future of how we all go to work and how we all interact and stay productive as we are at work. So you can expect more exciting use cases to come. We're going to demo what we've built already, but we believe that together we can better empower companies to engage with their employees and communicate with their employees at scale. And finally, next slide, please. So to Tom's point earlier, this is really what we think are going to be the principles that drive how companies interact and empower their employees and how they drive experiences at work. But we also believe that more empowered employees, more satisfied employees actually remain and stay with their companies for longer and drive more value for their businesses for the long term. So this is how we think that we can help drive change within your organization, empowering everyone, not just those groups of employees that have typically been given traditional tools to get work done, but actually enabling a cultural foundation within your organization for people to communicate, break silos, and have overall a really enjoyable and productive experience when they go to work. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is what we believe in. This is why we partner with Webex and Workplace from Facebook. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. This is just the beginning of the integrations that we look to deliver together, and you'll be seeing what that looks like right now when I hand over back to Tom.
Super, thank you, Amelia, and great presentation. I think of a partnership, as Amelia says, that is ongoing. So I think look at this as you know, part one or perhaps part two, actually, of an ongoing multi-episode series. So I think what I would like to do is I'm going to ask for you guys to kind of bear with me, use your imagination. What I'm going to do, I'll just describe to you the use case. I'd like to present a storyline in this demo whereby I'm going to play a couple of roles. I'm going to play an executive. I want to start my all hands meeting. I'm running into my office quickly. I need to make sure that video is good, audio is good, and that we're prepped and ready to provide an all hands session to the entire workforce. What I want to do in this all hands session is I'm reaching out to every employee, including, you know, the knowledge worker community, the frontline community, and so on. So that's the use case, that's the context. I'm going to start just talking about what the experience is from the executive perspective, the presenter perspective. And then I'm going to change roles. I'll warn you when I'm doing this to talk about, you know, what the administrator of the meeting does to be able to then set up the broadcast. That means the executive has a nice practice session. That means the administrator can then control when this goes live. And then last but not least, I will hand over to Addy, who's going to play the role of the frontline worker and show you what the experience is from the frontline worker perspective on Workplace. And then we'll wrap it up and just talk to you a little bit about what Addy is able to do and how we'd like to progress with some of the next wave of things that we're going to do. So with that said, first things first, I would like to start my all hands meeting. I'd like to get into the practice session before we go live with the all hands. I'm the executive. I've just sat down at my desk. I'm actually going to zoom in so you can see a little better what I'm doing here. I sit down at my desk and I'm lucky enough to have this Desk Pro. It's one of the series of devices that we offer from the Cisco portfolio. Desktop system. What is great about this desktop system? Why do I find it so valuable playing my executive role? It has AI intelligence in it, which means it doesn't matter if I'm sitting slightly to one side of it, directly in front of it, or even if I have somebody else next to me. The camera will understand that, will adapt the view automatically to be able to handle it. Moreover, the microphones have both beamforming to make sure that it's capturing the people that are in front that are doing the presentation to this device. It will also filter out peripheral noise. So we were chuckling before we got onto this session that the mowers often start running outside my window when I'm doing these kind of events. And so what I have is no worry. That gets filtered out by AI. I just sit down and I start the meeting, which is what I'll do. So I run and I sit down, and all I have here is a choice of meetings to which I can join. This is the one I want to join. And it's as simple as that. I'm now into the practice session, and there's my co-presenter, Chloe. Hey, Chloe, ready to roll? Perfect. Okay, so that's it from the presenter's perspective. The presenter now knows, sitting in front of the system, audio is great, video is great, and it's a single button to join the meeting. We are not live yet, to be clear, and so this is what we want to demonstrate: is how do we then get the live meeting now set up? So I'm going to take my executive hat off, and I'm now going to put the hat on of the administrator of the meeting. So again, bear with me while I play these two roles. So what do I do as the administrator? And what I'm going to do is I'll share with you the screen that I use to set up the live demonstration. So just give me 1 second while I bring this up. So this is my Webex meetings client view. This is what I'm looking at now. I'm the top left participant, no video on. I'm just waiting for the two presenters who are here, ready to present. So what do I do as the administrator? Well, I say, okay, guys, are you ready to go with your demonstration? We give the thumbs up, say yes, please. We're ready to get set up. I click down here, and up comes a choice of options. For me, one of them is start live streaming. I'll click that. I've got choices here. This first choice I want to pick is Workplace from Facebook. And what it gives me is a number of options. So I can add a name. I'll just say all hands demo. Give it a name. I can choose to share it into a group, and then I can decide which group I want to share it into. I've also, just to highlight down here, I can choose what streaming layout I want. In this case, I've chosen what's called focus, which means I will be big screen for the receivers of this streamed information. So I'll apply that. And now what I can do is select the group into which I want to push this stream. This will give me a number of options. Typically, I'd have a series of groups into which I can do these kind of live stream events. In this case, we've just set up one. Click that, click continue. It is now setting that up for me. And in a moment, it'll give me a button to push, thank you very much, which says start streaming. And so this is where, as the admin, I would turn to the presenters and I would say, we are going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I click start streaming. So it's as simple as that. I'm now streaming directly into Workplace from the WebEx meeting. And to be clear, what that means is anybody who's joined the WebEx meeting will, of course, see the discussion and presentation and all hands. But also your frontline worker community on Workplace will also now be receiving that information. So what I'm going to do, I will stop presenting. And I'm going to hand over to Adi, who is playing the role of our frontline worker. So Adi is going to show us what he sees.
So here is what I see. I'm going to share. So here is what I see. So the live stream is going on, and being a frontline worker working from anywhere, I can look at the live stream, I can listen to the executives, and I can also comment on there and say, thanks, Tom, for a great session today. So this comment goes, and I can like it. I can do all those kind of things. Back to you, Tom.
Super, thanks, Adi. So again, just to recap, what we've seen is simple and easy join with full confidence from the executive side that they are appearing and they are being heard well by the workforce. We've seen how simple it is for the administrator to set up the live stream and control that live stream so it's timed appropriately with when everyone's ready. And then finally, we've seen from Adi the reception of that information on Workplace as the frontline worker. We've also seen, and I think it's a really important next step for us, is the engagement information that Adi's now been feeding back into Workplace is the critical information. If you remember the stats that I was showing earlier on, this is the critical high value information. And so right now, what I would do as an executive, if I wanted to see that, I would go to the Workplace application on my laptop, which would typically be next to me here. What do we want to do going forward? And what are the critical next steps in terms of our integrations? We want to allow that executive to start seeing that information up on the screen of these devices. Why is that so important? Well, it's so important for engagement. People are looking at these screens, presenting to their workforce. The information is coming up, and that's so valuable for the executives or the presenters, the leaders. It's so valuable to get that real-time information. This is the thing that really allows for that kind of real-time engagement in the sense that the workforce at a distance is talking directly to the leadership. And I think in both parties in this case want that kind of information. So there's a little taster of the next wave of things we want to do amongst many that Amelia has presented. So more to come. Stay tuned. We'll be setting up more of these webinars going forward. So with that, I think I'm going to hand back, Adi, to you just to moderate us for any questions.
Thanks, Tom. One of the main questions that we have is that how do we get this service? And I would hand that question to Chloe, and if Chloe can answer that question about how somebody can get this live streaming feature that Tom just shared.
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a part of the release 41.5, which is currently in the general availability rollout. So check which version of WebEx that you're on currently. And the next iteration of that is what Tom demoed is there is a privilege that you need to be granted in order to do live streaming. So you need to check with your WebEx site administrator to grant you that privilege in order to actually live stream. And then another note, if you don't see it show up, you actually have to be a host or co-host to have that ability. So make sure that you check that you are the host or co-host as well if you have been granted that ability.
Thanks, Chloe. Another question, how does what we have seen today help organizations tackle the return of groups of employees into physical workspaces? So this goes back to the use case that Emilia was talking about. So Emilia, can you elaborate a little bit on that use case as to how when people return to office and how this partnership will help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we can all agree on, especially in the past year, is that we've managed to make mandatory remote work doable. We've made it work, right? And what we really want to do is actually help make it exceptional, because what we recognize is that as part of this past year, we've been able to empower dispersed workforces and groups of individuals that previously wouldn't have had opportunities to collaborate in their company or even be part of organizations because of where they lived and being geographically spread. What that means is that as companies are starting to bring people back into the workforce, we can't assume that it's going to go back and just be an exact replica of the pre-pandemic world of work. And instead, really what we need to be planning for is that the future of our working lives is going to be a blend of people who are physically in the office, as well as those who are dispersed, either working from home or working from other locations. So what's really critical here is the capability to make sure that you still have the reach and the scale to touch every employee across your organization, rather than just those who perhaps have the advantage of being enabled by certain technologies or people who live within the vicinity of the office. So examples that we're thinking of that Tom touched on is, first of all, to bring in these capabilities to Webex devices, but also so that you would be able to, say, live stream or watch a live stream from a meeting room that is equipped with Webex devices, as well as still being able to serve those folks who are perhaps watching the stream or interacting with the stream or even going live from their mobile device or from somewhere else or some other equipment. So that's what we believe. That's the future that we're looking to deliver. And it's really just an extension of the working model that we're all quite used to now, which is going to be the future of how we work.
Thanks, Amelia. Tom, this one is for you. What is, you touched upon this a little bit, but can you elaborate a little bit more around the value prop of using devices from either the home or the office? Why devices are so important, and how does it make it good for video conferencing?
It's such a super question, because I think there's this sense that, well, hey, I've got a laptop. Why is the laptop not good enough? Or when would I not want to use it? I would argue, look, there's a place and time for all of these different technologies. If I don't have a device handy to me, then a laptop is certainly what I would reach for and what I would use. I think, why do I find it, as somebody who works from home the majority of my time, this is really where I have worked for many years, why do I find a device to be so fundamental? And I think I would say probably the most important thing is my confidence in the quality of the experience, not just that I'm receiving, but the quality of experience that I'm providing. So that when I'm on a meeting, and this is, I think, happened very regularly, and I raise a question in an ongoing discussion, that I don't feel like I have to insert myself into the discussion. I'm heard immediately and I'm heard appropriately. I have the assets, I have the microphone architecture, I have the camera capabilities, I have the built-in intelligence to be able to manage that effectively. That's a really crucial part of it. I think the other is much more just pure CPU. I want to be able to work on my laptop. I will be running tools like, I run Miro with my design team as an example of just a third-party application that we use in our teams, Trello, GitHub, Jira, OneDrive, SharePoint. It goes on and on and on, right? There's a multitude of these applications that I'm using. These are running on my laptop, and they're running when I'm in meetings. And so being able to combine these two things effectively is really crucial. And then I think, just in general, I would say you can probably see this just from the setup that I showed here. When I'm looking at this system here, and I'm discussing Chloe and Amelia, you and Ashley and I, we're all in many meetings together. Being able to sit up straight, talk to you guys for long periods of time, it's comfortable. it's an effective, easy experience for me. If you imagine the difference between that and my laptop, I have a very different posture over my laptop. It's fine for short bursts of these kind of collaborative working experiences, but it is far less optimal if I'm really doing kind of dedicated work on these kinds of devices. And so the combination of these things and these pieces, allowing me to have a really dedicated environment in my office, for example, or in the office, actually on premise, together with the mobility of my laptop, that's really the if you like, the perfect solution. And that's why we create a portfolio of these devices to be able to address these different scenarios.
Thanks, Tom. Amelia, this one is for you. I know that we have been working on a similar kind of partnership with the portal devices at Facebook, and I know that we might have a separate webinar on that, but there is a question which I would like you to answer. The question is, a question about the Facebook portal and Webex application delivery. Like, will there be Webex meetings deployed on Portal TV soon? And the person says that this is an excellent entry-level solution for small huddle spaces, allowing people to try different things before budgeting out the big Webex devices at the Webex board. So just to touch on that, I know that we are working on that piece of the business too, but I'd just like you to provide a little update, and then Tom can also talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for the question. Thanks for your interest. This is just another example of the many ways that Cisco and Facebook actually partner together in a multitude of different ways. As it sounds like you already know, the Webex meeting app was made available on Portal last summer. It is my understanding that the teams are still working together to deliver more capabilities and Webex apps across the Portal suite of devices as well. I do not know the details. I don't know the details of the timeline of the rollout of delivery, but I do know that those teams are still partnering together and they have an integration roadmap like we have here. So I would say watch this space, there's more to come. Maybe Tom or Chloe knows more about the details in the short term, but yeah, really excited that you're using it already by the sounds of it.
I think maybe just to add to that, just to set the context about how we think of this breadth of devices. I think the way we are working in partnership, our two companies are working in partnership. What is the goal? The goal is, I think, if you like, the underpinnings of the software architecture integration of Webex and Workplace to provide the reach, the engagement, the real-time experiences, and so on. And then thinking about all of what I call the surfaces. What are all the different screens on which I want to be able to experience and receive that kind of information and engage with that? And when we think about all those surfaces, it ranges from the very bottom end, my phone, my laptop, my Portal devices, my Webex desk devices, my huddle room devices, my right through to the large room devices. That's the surfaces on which we want to be able to make sure that these experiences that we're talking about here can all be pulled in and provided. And so that's where, if you think about all of these moving parts, it all adds up to a very clear, very crisp understanding about how we want to enable our employee community wherever they may be. That's really the goal there. And so I think the Portal integrations, as Amelia said, is a part of the overall puzzle and continued investment there. Chloe,
Yeah,
I don't know if you add any more.
Yeah. I just want to add one to answer the question directly. The integration of Portal TV is a part of discussions right now and is something on the roadmap. As in terms of when is something I can't provide, where there's some other higher priority components that we're working on right now that we're still trying to figure out what that timeline looks like, and then Portal TV will come after that. So it is on the horizon, and I would love, if you do have a use case, which I know Lelio, I've reached out to you. Let's talk more about that and see, what it is that you're seeing and how we can, drive your use case to further that development on our side.
Thanks, guys. Those were all the questions. Thanks, everyone. Joe, back to you.
Tony. Hey, everybody. On behalf of our guests today, Amelia and Tom and Audie and the entire Cisco team, we thank you for your attendance and participation today. So with that, I want to say thanks everyone for attending. Have a great rest of your day. And this concludes our webinar today.